this is Krishna Kumar, and I welcome you all to this session. Like in the past few decades, we have seen the kind of impact that computers have made in our lives. A similar kind of impact is being made by this technology that we call power electronics. And that way, power electronics is a gift to us. So, this is why I'm calling this session Unboxing Power Electronics. We are trying to unbox that gift. We are trying to see various features of this gift, and of course, like as we move along and we study more about it, we will be able to use that gift, right? So it is now being widely acknowledged by all the scientists that just like computers, power electronics is going to dominate this century, right? The main reason is that computers, they act like brains, right, for industrial needs, and power electronics, it acts like a muscle, and the work on ground is actually being done by machines, whether electrical machines or mechanical things like an internal combustion engine. So combined power of computers and power electronics is huge, and it has basically changed the face of not just electrical engineering but all the domains of engineering. So that is why like so much of emphasis is being put, and if we go into a little depth, then we will be able to appreciate the impact that power electronics is bringing into our daily lives. So in this session is basically based on my interaction with students who have graduated in electrical engineering and electronics engineering. What I find is that they most of them do not like power electronics, and the main reason is that they have got it all wrong. The kind of books that they have studied, they have never focused on the main theme, that the philosophy of power electronics. So in this session, we are going to discuss the philosophy of power electronics. So these are the basic topics that we will be dealing with today. So I'll be defining power electronics, not just with the help of a definition, but the philosophy behind it and why do we do it, right? Then I'll take example. This is another reason why students did not like power electronics, because they found that the mathematical tools that were involved were too much demanding. So I'll explain why we need those kinds of tools actually. And in the end, when I'll be discussing about the job opportunities, then we'll see that these mathematical tools are extremely important. Then we will see the role of passive components, and of course, we'll discuss about the applications and opportunities. So to start with, I take an example where we have a solar panel. All of us have seen these kinds of panels, and this panel actually gives it converts light energy into electrical energy, and that electrical energy is basically uh, in DC form, right? So, but the kind of load that we want to drive from this source is an AC load most of the times. For example, this grid is an AC load, right? And this the panel that is giving you power is basically giving you power in the form of DC. So the source is DC and the load is AC. So how do we resolve the compatibility between them? So for that, we use a circuit which is known as an inverter, right? So basically what we are doing here is we are drawing power from the source and delivering it to the load with the help of this circuit, which is known as an inverter. So here I'll be taking the example of an inverter. This is the most basic kind of inverter. It is known as a half bridge inverter. So in the left of this figure, I have shown DC sources with the help of these batteries. And this load is an AC load, which means that the kind of voltage it requires has to reverse its polarity periodically, right? So for the DC source, the higher potential point, this is the connection which we call as the positive DC rail, and the lower potential, the junction and the corresponding rail is known as the negative DC rail. Okay, so to make this kind of conversion from DC to AC, I have placed two switches here, S1 and S2. Here I'll just show you what kind of switches these are, but we are not going to discuss much about this. So this is what we call an IGBT. It can be a MOSFET and other kinds of switches. And all of them, they fall in the category of a transistor part, which means that you can control this switch with the help of this terminal, which is known as a gate, right? So we have to keep in mind that this is a switch which can be electronically controlled, which means that you can switch it on at your will and you can switch it off at your will, right? So this switch consists of a transistor part and a diode part. So we have this kind of circuit here, and I'm explaining how to analyze this circuit. So for the purpose of analysis, I see that this load, this AC load, is connected between 2 points, which are A and B, right? And I am assuming this as my reference node. I'm considering point B as my reference node, which means that the potential there is assumed to be 0 volts, which also means that the potential at the positive DC rail will be plus VDC and the potential at the negative DC rail will be minus VDC, right? So on this basis, we are going to analyze this circuit. We are going to see what happens when you switch on S1 and switch off S2 and vice versa. So I am taking the case 1. Here what I have done, this I have switched on this switch S1 and S2 is off here. So in this case, what you see is this potential of the positive DC rail plus VDC, it appears at this point A, right? And the potential at point B was assumed to be 0. So if you see the potential difference, which is the voltage across the load, if you see that potential difference, it will come out to be VDC, right? The potential at A minus the potential at B. Now let us change the switching state. So what I have done here is I have kept this switch S1 as off and S2 in its on position. Now in this case, the potential of the negative DC rail appears at point A, and you see that potential at A is now lower than potential at B. In the previous case, we saw that the potential at A was higher with respect to the potential at B. So basically what has happened is the voltage has reversed its polarity. If you see the potential difference VA minus VB, that will be minus VDC, right? So with this kind of operation, what you can do is you can reverse the polarity of the voltage, right? So in these are the two possible combinations. In one combination, S1 was on and S2 was off, and in the second combination, S1 was off and S2 was on. So in the first combination, you get the potential difference as VDC, and in the second combination, you got the potential as minus VD. So this kind of switching combinations, they are known as states. So we have two states here. One we call as state P, because the voltage here was positive, and when we got the voltage negative, we are calling it as state N. So remember the original problem. The original problem was to convert the DC into AC, right? So this is how we do it. For example, if I require a waveform with frequency of 50 hertz, so what I do is for a duration of 0.01 seconds, I keep the state P on, which means that the voltage across the load will be plus VDC. For the remaining time, yani for 0.01 seconds more, I keep the state N as operational, which means that S1 is off and S2 is on, right? So, and I repeat this cycle again and again. So this is a period of 0.02 seconds, which will give you a frequency of 50 hertz. So what you are doing, you are converting DC into AC, and you are doing it with the help of switches. So this lies at the heart of power electronics. And what we are doing here is we are systematically we are altering the states, we are manipulating the states systematically, which means for half of the time P state is operational, and for half the rest of the time N state is operational, and we are doing it repeatedly. So this type of systematic manipulation, we call it modulation. So this modulation is as important as the circuit that we had shown for the inverter. So with the help of this example, we can define what power electronics is. This is what it is. It is a technology which is dealing with conversion of power, right? We converted DC power into, and we'll see how do we control it also. But yeah, as of now, we have just shown the conversion. This type of conversion is carried out with the help of semiconductor devices. Important feature is that these semiconductor devices, they operate in switching mode. They are used as switches. This is what most of the time the students forget to appreciate about power electronics. I'll differentiate between linear and power electronics later on. So with the help of these devices operating in switching mode, we are able to convert one form of electrical power into another form. This is the reason why we are doing it. Once you operate in this manner, you are able to obtain an efficiency as high as 99%. So why does it happen? So I have this device here, any device. The potential difference across this device is, and the current flowing through this device is I. So the power consumed by this device will be equal to V, the product of V and I, right? These are the instantaneous values of voltages and currents, voltage and current. So now what we see here is we are operating a semiconductor device in a switching mode, right? For example, if you take BJT, the regular transistor that you studied about, it can operate in three valid regions, right? We studied about the saturation region, we studied about the cutoff region, and we also studied about the active region. So when you are operating that BJT in saturation and cutoff modes, in saturation, it acts like an on switch, and in cutoff mode, it acts like an off switch. And this is the linear region where you operate this transistor as an amplifier, right? So this same transistor, when you're operating it in cutoff and saturation mode, this transistor is acting like a switch, right? And here it is acting in its linear region. So when you're operating this BJT as a switch, then it comes under the category of power electronics. This term is misleading in nature. Power does not mean that it has to be a high powered application. It can be, the application can be as low as of few milliwatts, right? So the same device, semiconductor device, when you are operating it as a switch, then it comes under power electronics. And when you are operating it in its active or linear region, then that is known as linear electronics. This is the most crucial part of power electronics we should be able to appreciate. Once we do it, the whole understanding becomes very easy. So why this is so important? So I was talking about power, that is the product of instantaneous voltage and instantaneous current. So now I have a device which I am operating like a switch, right? So we have two possibilities here. One, when it is acting like an on switch, and the other one when it is off. When it is on, the potential difference across this switch is zero, right? Current may be anything. When it is off, the potential difference may be of any magnitude and any polarity also, but the current through it is zero. So now if you calculate the power losses, you see that here this power loss is V into I, and because the potential difference was zero, irrespective of the value of current, the power loss will be zero. Here too, the power is product of voltage and current, and irrespective of the potential difference here, because it is in the off mode, the value of current will be zero. So the power loss will be zero. So when you are operating that device in switching mode as a switch, then the power losses, in ideal cases, the power losses, they are zero. And that is why we are able to attain an efficiency as high as 99%. So this is why we are bothering to operate that device as a switch. It is fulfilling two purposes. One, it is converting one type of electrical power into another, and the other one is the efficiency which will be attained will be very high. So now this brings us to another important part. So you have a great machine, that is good, but you should also know how to use it, right? The circuit that I showed you was like this great machine, but that circuit itself in itself is of no use unless you know how to operate it to fulfill the desired objectives, right? So in power electronics we are going to use two terminologies very frequently. What you have is the topology, the kind of circuit that I had shown, that is commonly known as the power circuit. The circuit which had DC source and DC sources and the switches, that was the power circuit. The way that you control the circuit is known as modulation, right? So these two parts, they are intertwined with each other. You may know how to control a great machine, but you have to have a great machine, right? Similarly, your modulation schemes were may be very sophisticated, but your power circuit should be such that it should be able to deliver on those modulation objectives. All of us know that when we are talking about an alternating waveform, we are talking about a shape like this, right? We are talking about a sinusoidal shape. But the kind of waveform that we obtained from an inverter, which we discussed here, is a square wave. So this brings us to a problem which is solved by modulation. Now, see, the circuit itself cannot produce a sinusoidal waveform. Why? Because this waveform is a continuous waveform. At all points of time, it will have some finite values. But the kind of circuit you have, it is inherently discrete in nature, because a switch can either be on or it can be off, right? There is no intermediate state. That's why it is able to synthesize a waveform which is discrete in nature, right? It is going from one value to another value directly. No in between states are possible. So it is not possible to directly obtain a sine wave from an inverter, right? So if I am not able to directly do something, what I do is I imitate it, right? For example, I want to become like Amitabh Bachchan. So this is the original Amitabh Bachchan, and of course, none of us can become like him, right? In terms of the fame, the uh, in terms of wealth, we may become like him, but the kind of the kind of actor he is, it's very difficult, right? So if I want to become like him, what I do, I try to imitate him, right? I try to get hair like him, and I try to get specs like him, or I try to get beard like him. So basically I can become an imitator. I can copy his hair, and I can copy his glasses, and I can copy his facial hair, and I can try to look like him, right? So I can become an imitator. So our original problem was to obtain a sinusoidal wave from the inverter, right? But what we got is a square wave. But if you want to closely imitate a sine wave, you have a technology for that, right? So the original waveform that you're trying to have is a sinusoidal waveform, and you can imitate it with the help of a technology which is called pulse width modulation, right? So far what we have done is this: we did a very poor imitation. The hair was like nowhere like him, and the facial hair, again, it was nowhere like him, and we even wore wrong kinds of jewels, right? So this was a poor imitation, and it was basically the square wave. So remember here, this was the objective, and this is what we get: poor imitation. We are trying to get a good imitation, and that good imitation is done by pulse width modulation technology. But how do we judge a waveform? Like, just by its on by looking at the waveform, we can, it is a qualitative approach, right? It is not a quantitative approach. So mathematics gives us certain tools with which we can analyze a waveform. We can see whether it is a good imitation or a poor imitation. One of those tools is given by what we call as Fourier's theorem. I'm not going to discuss the maths behind it. I'll just try to visualize what does Fourier's theorem do, right? So what I do here is I take a sinusoidal waveform, and the frequency of this waveform is f naught. I take another sinusoidal waveform with thrice the frequency, right? So the time in which the first waveform makes one cycle, the second waveform, it makes 3 cycles. The time period here is 1/3 of the first one, which means that the frequency is thrice. And the amplitude of the second waveform is different than that of the first. So what I do is I add these two waveforms, and this is what I get. See, the first waveform was a sine waveform. The second waveform was also a sine waveform, but with a different frequency. When you add these two sinusoidal waveforms, what you get is a non-sinusoidal waveform, although it is periodic in nature. Again, I extend this addition, and what I do is I take another waveform of 5 times the frequency of the original one, and I add this waveform also to the previous two, and this is what I get, right? So if you see, it is getting closer to a square waveform, right? So if in this manner, if you add a number of sinusoidal waveforms of different frequencies, you get a waveform like this, which looks like a square waveform, but it is a periodic waveform, but it is non-sinusoidal, right? So how do you get this kind of waveform? By adding these waveforms of frequencies f naught, 3f naught, 5f naught, and 7f naught. So what I did here is I added these waveforms to obtain this non-sinusoidal waveform. This is known as synthesis. You are adding up certain waveforms and you are obtaining another waveform, right? The converse of this is also true. It means that if you break this waveform, then you will get a number of sinusoidal waveforms, right? This breaking up of waveforms is called analysis. This analysis is similar to what we did here, right? When we are trying to match the hair, when we are trying to match the glasses, what we are doing is we are analyzing, right? So this type of analysis, the tool for this type of analysis is offered by the Fourier's theorem. So it basically means that if you have a non-sinusoidal waveform, it is periodic in nature, then this kind of waveform can be broken down into a number of sinusoidal waveforms, which will be of different frequencies. Of course, one of the waveforms of these sinusoidal waveforms, one will have frequency equal to the original frequency, right? So this brings us to the concept of harmonics. That component which has the same frequency as the original one is called fundamental component. Other ones, they are called harmonics. So if the frequency is 3 times the frequency of the original waveform, we call it third harmonic, fifth harmonic, seventh harmonic, and so on. So these harmonics are undesirable, right? Remember what was our purpose? Our purpose was to attain this kind of waveform, a sinusoidal waveform. So if I remove these harmonics, then I'll attain the purpose, right? This is what we call as FFT analysis. This is fast Fourier transform. It is a kind of software tool which helps you to analyze periodic waveforms with the help of Fourier's theorem. So if we analyze a square waveform, you get a picture like this, right? Now this is quantitative in nature. What you saw previously, that this is a poor imitation of a sine wave, it was basically a qualitative judgment. Now we are trying to judge it in a quantitative manner, right? So this was the fundamental component, right? This was the third harmonic. There is a second in between, which is zero, happens to be zero here. The peak value here is in percentage, right? So in terms of the fundamental component, what is the percentage? What is the amplitude of the sinusoidal waveform of 3f naught frequency? So this is what we call as a harmonic spectrum. So in this harmonic spectrum, we see that a square waveform has prominent presence of lower order harmonics.